Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we are about to study Jeremiah 46, which begins an entirely new section of the book of Jeremiah. This section lasts from 46 through 51, so almost to the end of the book. And in this section, Yirmiyahu, the prophet, directs his prophecies and his words to the other nations of the world. His primary audience has always been Yehuda, the people of Judah, whether they were in Judah or, as in the last few chapters, when they were some of the remnants had ran to Egypt, and Jeremiah with them. But his primary audience being the Jews. However, as we have seen many times, Yirmiyahu when he was originally appointed as a prophet by God, he was appointed as a prophet Lagoyim, to the nations. So he has messages for all of the nations of the world, and we are going to read about them here. Now, in chapter 46 is really divided into two halves. I'm going to try to go through both halves today, and those two halves are really regarding two wars that Egypt fought against Babylon. The first war happened. It was a famous historical battle called the Battle of Carchemish. Now, if you remember, if we wind back a while, just to understand some of the geopolitical politics of the Middle East at the time, there was, during the prior to the ascendancy of the Babylonian Empire, the Assyrian Empire was a world power. The Assyrian Empire began to crumble in the late, 7th century BCE, and the Babylonians basically conquered the Assyrian Empire and became the strong power in the Middle East. There were remnants of the Assyrian Empire that tried to gather in parts of Syria, and they allied themselves with the Egyptians, who were the last remaining strong power that had the might to challenge the Babylonians for power over the Middle East. So Pharaoh Necho led an expedition of Egyptian forces to through, of course, the land of which is now Israel, up towards Syria, and joined the remnants of the Assyrian forces in a final battle against Babylon in order to try to maintain Assyrian power and to try to knock down the Babylonians. It was during the march of Pharaoh and his forces through the land of Judea that Josiah, the king, encountered the Egyptian forces and tried to stop them and engage them in battle at Megiddo, and at the famous battle at Megiddo. And this was the battle at which the Egyptians killed the king Josiah. But then they went, and after defeating the Judean forces, they went up to join the Assyrian forces to meet the Babylonians. It was a massive loss on the part of the Egyptians, and the Egyptians lost the Battle of Carchemish. The Assyrian Empire was pretty much wiped off the map, and the Babylonians remained in charge of the Middle East then for about another 100 years or so, until Persia came and took down the Babylonians. Now, so the first battle that Yirmiyahu is going to be talking about is the Battle of Carchemish. Another battle that happened was later. If you remember, when Jeremiah left with some of the Jewish refugees into Egypt for safety in Egypt, he predicted that the Babylonians were going to march and come into Egypt and destroy and crush the Egyptians in their own homeland. That was another battle that happened about, I guess that would be about 25 to 30 years later or so. So first there's this battle of Carchemish, which happened somewhere in Carchemish, which is near the Euphrates River, and the second battle was the battle that occurred in Egypt itself, both led by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, against the Egyptians, and both were massive defeats for the Egyptians. So now with understanding that history, we can understand this chapter. So Asher hayod dvar Adonai el Yirmiyahu hanavi al Hagayim. Then these were the words that God stated to Jeremiah the prophet regarding the other nations, the nations of the world. Verse 2. First, Lemitzrayim regarding Egypt, Alchel Paro regarding the armies of Pharaoh Necho, Melech Mitzrayim, the king of Egypt, Asher Haya regarding that battle which occurred al Nahar Parat on the river Euphrates, Carchemish, in the place called Carchemish, Asher Hikad Nebuchadnezzar Melech Bavel, where Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, struck the Egyptians there, Bishnas Aravias, which occurred during the 4th year, Yehoiakim ben Yoshio Melech Yehuda, the 4th year of the reign of Yehoiakim ben Yoshio, the king of Yehuda. Yehoiakim had been placed in power in Yehuda by the Egyptians. When Josiah died at the hands of the Egyptians at the Battle of Megiddo, his son Yehoachaz took over the kingdom. Yehoachaz was anti-Egyptian, and the Egyptians didn't like him. So the Egyptians, after he was only ruled for a few months, the Egyptians captured Yehoachaz and put Yehoiakim into power, which gives us an inkling of an understanding as to why Yehoiakim had his loyalties to Egypt and why Yehoiakim decided to rebel against the Babylonians, even though the Babylonians were the ascendant power. It didn't work out very well for him, but that was just to understand why he was more allied with the Egyptians than with the Babylonians. So now, in the next verses, we're speaking as if Jeremiah is speaking as if he was a general in the Egyptian army, and he's talking to the Egyptian army to get ready. Prepare your shield and your buckles, and approach the battle. Isru hasusim va'aluha parashim. Harness the horses. Let the riders get on the horses. V'hityatzvu b'kovaim, and put on your helmets. Mirku harumachim. Livshu hasirionot. Polish your spears and put on your armor, and sharpen the lances. Madua ra'isi hema chatim nisogim. Why do I see the Egyptian forces that are so afraid? Nisogim achar, they're running away from battle. V'giborehem, all of their powerful men, yukatu umanos nasu, they are getting struck. They're running. They're fleeing the battle. V'lo hifnu, and they not even looking. They're turning to look back. They're just running. Mogor misaviv no Adonai. There's so much terror all around because the Babylonians are crushing them in battle. So he's talking as if he's a general saying, "Get ready for battle. Get ready. Get ready. Get ready. Why are you running away?" I'm sorry, I skipped a verse. Let me go back. Verse 6. Al yonos hakal, al yimole tagibar. The fast runners, they shouldn't be running, and the powerful men, they shouldn't be trying to escape. Tzafona al yad nahar pras. This is all going while this all goes on up north near the river Euphrates. Kashlu v'nafalu. They have fallen. They are staggering, and they have stumbled, and they fall. Mizeh kaya aryala. Who is this that is rising like the river. In other words, he's talking about the Babylonian troops that are just rising on the battlefront like the river Nile rises. Kanaharot Yidgashu Meimav, whose waters pour forth like rivers and rivers of soldiers, more and more and more coming. Mitzrayim Kaya Arya Ale. It is Egypt that rises like the Nile. Kanaharot Yidgashu Mayim, whose waters pour forth like rivers. It is Egypt. Vayomer Ale Achas Eretz. I am going to get up and cover the whole world. Ovida ir v'yoshveva. I will be the one who destroys cities and their inhabitants. This is crucial here because hinted in this verse is the mistake that Mitzrayim makes. Why is it that Egypt is losing all these battles? Why is it that Egypt is getting punished and getting struck down in battle? I am going to do, after we study chapter 46 together, I'm going to do another podcast, which is a sort of an epilogue, explaining what it is that's wrong with Egypt, what it is that they're getting criticized for. Every prophecy is not just a prediction of events. The purpose of a prophecy is always to teach that it is our behavior that leads to destruction. Over here, Yirmiyahu is saying, Egypt, you're the ones that get up like the river and stand proud and tall. In other words, you are the ones who act arrogantly. You are the ones that say, I will get up, I will cover the earth, I will destroy cities, I will destroy the people. In other words, the Nile that you have and the advantages that you have, you're the ones that act arrogantly. This is the reason why this punishment is coming upon you. I will get to that issue in more detail. But here, let's continue reading Jeremiah's prophecy about this. Alu hasusim v'holulu harechav. Let the horses advance and let the chariots charge madly forward. V'yetzu hagiborim, and let the mighty go forth. Kush ufut tosei magain. The people of Cush and Put, these are allies that had gotten together with the Egyptians, and those that are holding shields, Viludim, and the people from Ludim, who Tosei Dorche Kashes, who hold bows and arrows, Vahayomahu, and that day, Ladonai Elohim Tzivaos, will be the day of the Lord God of hosts. Yom Nikamalina Kemitzara. This is a day of revenge, to take revenge against those who are his enemies. Remember, why is Egypt being called their enemies? Because of that arrogance. And I am going to get into that detail a little bit more, like I said, in the epilogue to this chapter. And the sword will devour, the sword will be sated as if it was a hungry monster, and overflow with their blood. Ki zevach ladonai Elohim tzvaos be'eretz tzafon. This is like a sacrifice for the Lord God in the northern lands, al nahar Pras, in the river Egypt. This terminology is very reminiscent of what we find in Isaiah 30:14, where we say, I'm sorry, is Isaiah 34, verse 6, where we see a very similar terminology used. I'll mention what the words are there used are Ki zevach laHashem bivatzra. There is a sacrifice to God. It's that whole verse there is very similar, talking about the revenge against the land of Edom on the day of the destruction of Edom. It also talks about the sword, the blood, and all that, just this very bloody imagery. And it also calls it the Ki zevach laHashem bivatzra. Jeremiah is using a very similar term now. Zevach laHashem be'eretz tzafon on the Harpras and on the Euphrates River. So here he is, Alei Gilad, go up to Gilad. Ukechi tsori, and take tsori, which is balm, which is used to help heal wounds. B'sulas bas Mitzrayim, the fair maiden of Egypt, would be would be the translation of these words. It's trying to say, Egyptians, you're getting struck so hard, you need to go get medicines. Lashav here beit refuot to Allah ein lach. However, you're going to go and try to get these things, but it's going to be for nothing, because there are so many wounds that you won't be. There will be no healing for you. Shamu goyim kilonech. The nations have heard your shame, your loss. The world now knows that you have been ashamed, that you have been crushed. V'tzivchasech mala haaretz, and your screams have filled the earth. Ki gibar b'gibar kashalu yachtav naflu shneim, because one mighty man has stumbled over the other mighty man, and together they have all fallen. I'm going to divide Jeremiah 46a and b. So this will be 46a, and this was discussing Jeremiah's prophecy about the defeat of the Egyptians at the Battle of Carchemish. And we see at the end, Shamu goyim klonech, it was because of your arrogance that you're getting punished, and now the nations have seen your shame, which is a fitting punishment for the arrogance that they started with. Thank you for studying 46a. Looking forward to studying 46b together.